But with a lot of these guys, what was interesting about Nick Land is that they keep getting the same ideas. These guys take drugs, whether it's Elon, Nick Land, or even in the 70s, the scientist John C. Lilly. John C. Lilly was an eminent scientist, brilliant dude. He started doing ketamine, the same drug everyone does in Silicon Valley. And when they do this drug, and even if you're an atheist materialist, this is still interesting, they all get the same idea, which is that the machines are, coming. It's like Skynet and Terminator. They're coming together. They're evolving to eventually take over, and that we are hanging ourselves with the rope we're currently building by building this. But this goes back. Nick Land was interesting, but he became less interesting to me when I realized that other scientists in the 70s, John C. Lilly, the movie Altered States from 1980, this horror movie. This is about he would have these visions about the machines. He called them the solid state entities. He would have this in the 70s, Tucker, in this tank, the isolation tank he'd go in. The new, and you probably haven't seen it, but the new Mission Impossible movie, Tom Cruise, he fights this AI and he goes in the isolation tank and he has these visions of it. One of the biggest movies of this past summer. And that plot point comes from John C. Lilly and the visions he would get of AI apocalypse in the isolation tank back in the 70s. So I bring this up to say Nick Land is the most foremost proponent of it that has a public name, even though he's not that famous right now. But this goes back a long time, at least back to the 70s.
So so people take ketamine and they all have the same vision. Or species of the same vision.
Enough of them do to make it very strange and alarming. That's the thing, that one of the main influences on both the show I was building and these guys, Brian Geisen, William S. Burroughs, his creative partner, he would say the thing is about getting high and about doing psychedelics is that, you can spot people, eventually who are on the same drug and you're both getting the same ideas. Some drugs, he said, increases telepathy, it puts them on the same wavelength. So with a lot of these guys,
it's a little weird that different people from different places, different countries, different life experiences would take a drug and have the same kind of vision.
It's totally weird. And for anyone who's tuned in,
that can't be organic.
No. But that is weird beyond what anyone's individual personal beliefs are. So
exactly.
So if anyone tunes in and they're like, where did Tucker find this guy that looks like Greg Olson talking about insane AI stuff? If they're an atheist, they don't believe any of this. Like you're saying, the fact that people are taking these drugs and they're very powerful and they work in tech and they are getting the same ideas, the same fears. They think that in some cases they're talking to the same entities. There are books now about, if you take DMT, if you encounter this machine elf, be wary of this. They're encountering the same stuff. That's an interesting phenomenon, just biologically, regardless of what people.
Like ancient sacred art has the same images, created on different continents at different periods. They couldn't have had contact with each other, so why are they drawing the same Birdman or the same purse? Because they're seeing the same visions, which suggests that those visions are real.
Why is snake worship universal around the world?
Exactly.
Serpent worship. Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's something that people are responding to that's not coming from within them, but outside of them.
That was Carl Jung's main insight, is that getting to the idea of can ideas come from without you and not just within you? So yeah.
Well, yeah, and the materialist doesn't want to admit that, and our culture has, since we dropped the atom bomb, has sort of written off the possibility that could be true, but it's just reconnecting with something that every civilization has always assumed was true, which is there's a spiritual realm that's every bit as real as your iPhone or this desk, and it's absolutely real, and it acts on us all the time. And that is the truth. Yeah. And I know you seem to take that for granted, but it's still shocking to those of us who grew up in basically a godless country. It's
totally. One of the basis for my interest in a lot of this is, my mom was raised in a Christian home. I consider, I'm a Christian myself. And my mom would always say, she became a Christian in the 70s, but she knew all the psychedelic groups back in the 60s, Love, Spirit. She and my aunt would go to Doors shows and all those groups from the late 1960s. And something that she'd say, and that people who are rock and rollers into the occult would say, that they both say the same thing, which is that people take drugs, musicians do, for inspiration, for creativity, to tap themselves into the spiritual realm, to pull something from outside themselves. So the basis for my interest in a lot of this stuff was that's something my mom says. My mom's a great Christian, one of the all-time greats. And this is something that, every musician knows too. That's why they take drugs, is to tap into the spiritual
So
world.
I didn't know that. I thought that people took drugs. I mean, I took drugs.
People take drugs for all kinds of reasons.
I'll admit it. But I always assumed that those insights are really mostly fake insights, but all of that stuff came from within. That it was, I bought the Freudian analysis of it, that you only use 10% of your brain, and there's this whole sort of primordial sea in your head of thoughts and visions that you're not in touch with on a daily basis, but that drugs thin the membrane. But it never occurred to me a single time until middle age, when I started to see reality, that actually they're coming from outside you.
Well, and Tucker, that's a great point. That's something that any psychedelic guy, it's kind of a double standard thing to do, where when talking about drug use, they'll always say, well, there's no difference between what's going on in my head and what's going outside. We're all one. That's always, I think it was William James said, the great oceanic feeling, what he got,
Yes.
what he would, but that's always their big insight is, hey man, what's going on in my head is different from what's going outside, until the psychonaut encounters some sort of weird demon on DMT. And then they backtrack and they're like, brother, that's just in my head. Don't worry. What's in my head can't get in your head. So they go from it's
until you have two different people meeting the same demon.
Right.
Then you realize, well, wait a second.
Well, psychonauts are maybe not the most logistically consistent.
No, but I'm
guys.
just saying, again, just to hammer the point again and again and again, because it can't be hammered hard enough, that there is a realm that exists outside of us over which we are not in control.
I believe that. Yes.
And that it can enter, you can bring stuff into you.
Right.
That has control over you.
Right. Totally. And, to bring this back into some historical precedent, a good question that, people have asked me are, what are the precedents for this? Because this is really weird to think of people in tech, who are into strange AI stuff. I thought everyone was pretty grounded. But, if you look at, are you familiar with the story of Jack Parsons over at,
Please tell the story if you don't mind.
I'll do a succinct one. Jack Parsons, he grew up in Pasadena. He was brought on by I think it's Theodore von Karman, this scientist over at I think it's Caltech, or eventually it was JPL. But he was really into the occult, and he summoned the devil allegedly when he was 13. Really into esoteric stuff. Part of this greater LA avant-garde scene. And he's I think he's been said he's the fourth most important person in the history of jet rocketry and stuff like that. But he was really into the idea of bringing in manifesting a supernatural being. So he would go with L. Ron Hubbard, the future founder of Scientology. And I know that Scientology, they say that L. Ron Hubbard was doing intelligence work. He wasn't really into this stuff, but he would go with L. Ron Hubbard into the Pasadena Arroyo Seco, and they do rituals there, and they try to manifest, a kind of supernatural figure. So there's a classic example there, and science is littered with these, of people who are brilliant scientists, but who are into incredibly strange stuff. And, the guy...
I noticed that a lot of those scientists are working on technology that kills people.
Yeah, they also do that too. And the guy that brought him on...
Well, Parsons was doing that.
Well,
ultimately the technology was used to kill people.
Which one are you referring to?
Rocketry.
Oh yeah, rocketry was. And what's funny too is he either he or von Karman, they donated to my friend Rick Spence. He's like the Doc Brown to my Marty McFly. He's this historian I brought on for my show trying to do it. And he's an expert on Parsons and this stuff. And he pointed out to me that Parsons and von Karman, that they were part of the Pasadena Cell 122 of the Communist Party, which is, he said, the exact same one that, I forget if it was Robert or Frank Oppenheimer in Pasadena were also donating money to. So there's an incidental, funny historical connection there between Oppenheimer and Parsons and, the Communist Party. But
as if we needed more evidence that nuclear weapons are demonic.
Well,
I know this upsets certain people on the so-called right, but it's evil, and if you can't see it as evil,
nuclear, yeah.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.